Hi all, I have another impressive attacking game from Leela Chess, ID 507, against Stockfish 7. So Leela playing white this time. Leela's on a GTX 1060 graphics card. Stockfish 7 on a 2.8 setup, 4 CPU setup. So let's see what happened in this game. E4, E6, the French defense. We have D4, D5, the advanced variation. So this is the book set for both engines to start from this position. So this is the end of the book with C3. So the advanced French defense variation. Knight F3, Bishop D7. So O was waiting move chosen there. It's a very practical move in many respects. We have A3 and pardon me, A3. Quite often Bishop E2 is an alternative here. For example, like this, where the quirky Knight A3 helps support D4, and this is thought to be about equal. But A3 is maybe more mainline, in fact. C4. Now, Leela takes the opportunity here, given the bishop hasn't got a great diagonal here, to actually fianchetto with G3. We have Knight A5, Knight BD2, stopping that Knight B3 for a moment. Bishop E7, Bishop G2, Knight H6, and this knight wants to occupy a nice light square. White castles, black castles, Rook E1. Knight F5, and you might think, hang on, this is a bit provocative here, isn't it? Especially against Leela, you might expect Leela to play just G4. In fact, although Leela looks like a mad hacker sometimes, she waits until all the conditions are perfect. So it's like a magic trick. You try and play like Leela, it might backfire because she waits until the perfect conditions. Here, G4 just doesn't really cut the mustard in this particular position because of Knight H4. Knight takes, Bishop takes. Knight F3, for example, it doesn't achieve anything. Knight B3, hitting the rook. And if this dark square bishop is taken, this is a really rock solid position for black. It's very difficult for white to do anything here. If white tries for an attack, this can be ignored, because if it's not, then G5 traps the bishop. But assuming it's ignored, here with, say, A5, black can get on with using the bishop here to smash through on the queen side. White's not going to be able to build up an attack. And this is what I mean. If you try and imitate the general style of Leela, it might backfire. So she's not interested in G4 in this particular position here after Knight F5 immediately. So instead we have Rook B1, which handles the potential tempo gain Knight B3 in advance if this knight is needed to move. So that's important as well, if that's connected to not losing the dark square bishop. Now H6. So this does seem a little bit provocative now. And that is a provocation to Leela. And it's here with Rook on B1, so all these little conditions being set, that the caveman stuff is a lot more effective. G4, full steam ahead in this position, because you can look at the difference now, you can feel the differences why they're much more effective, because we can take here now, we're not going to lose the C1 bishop to Knight B3 or anything, so kicking this bishop back, preserving this bishop. This is really important to preserve this bishop, because it can be used as a battering ram for bishop takes H6 in potential future variations. Now we have Rook B8, Queen D2, so installing a battery against H6. And if this queen's nudged, she can go to E3 here. For example, here this wasn't played, Queen E3 to keep that battery on H6 alive. So this position might even take time to get rid of that knight or discourage it, and then carry on with this position. It's dynamic equality still there though. So anyway, let's go back. So Queen D2 played here. This wasn't tested. Knight B3. We have instead Bishop A4. And now, can you guess Leela's next move? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. Okay, H4. Now, this is really quite interesting. The basic question is, can black actually take this in and live to tell the tale? b6 was played. If bishop takes h4, there's a move here which is very important for white to get a big advantage, which you might not think of. First of all, there's two very tempting attacking moves. One seems to be much stronger than the other. What would you play here? Okay, I'm just going to show you both. The one which isn't so convincing is g5, actually, believe it or not, because if we have this position with bishop c2 is an important distraction move to get the queen to be able to take that. If queen takes, then there's the knight drops. So this is an important defensive resource available to black. And if white's forced to play knight takes f7, the desperado, the f-file pressure and black's general pressure is at least even. So it's all blown. Any attacking potential is 0 here. So that's why I believe there's a much more important attacking idea in this position. Yeah, it seems these amazing defensive resources with bishop c2 exist. But with bishop takes h6 instead, this is a whole different scenario after queen takes. The bishop drops back. Say rook e2, g5. This position is ripe for knight h2 to g4 to f6. White's strength in this position is these two. This rook e2 is very important. It wasn't just say this rook e2. It's important to stop this bishop c2. So very important to stop that defensive resource. And now white can get on with this longer term threat of knight h2 to g4 to f6. This is far more convincing here than anything else, because black is stranded basically. Black's in big trouble here in this kind of scenario. Black would have to give up the bishop. It's starting to look like queen g8 anyway, so this would just be very nasty for black. So that would be the real way to punish bishop takes h4 in this position. Black has a lot of interesting defensive resources available, but bishop takes h6 seems to blast its way through this position. So basically, yeah, this wasn't taken anyway. We have now b6. So you might also think, hang on, what about in this position, knight b3 here? We can still get a good position here with white building up, actually. As an example, this is a nice build-up position we can use to try and slowly open that g-file. So this will be in white's favour. So anyway, b6, so not being tempted by knight b3 again. And anyway, white plays this sort of plan in the main line of the game. So h5, which fixes this little pawn chain that's going to be targeted. So knight c6, bishop h3, knight a5. So with the fixed target of that little pawn chain now, g5 really attacking this little pawn chain around black's king. This looks like an absolutely ideal attacking position, of course. Knight b3, queen e3, hg, knight takes g5. It's very dangerous, this g-file. White's also, with the pressure on e6, any f6 is totally discouraged, especially with the bishop there. It's usually, sometimes it's lurking, protecting e6, but f6 is totally out of the question because of that wonderful bishop on h3. Queen e8, king h2. So white is able just to put beautiful pressure now on the h-file. So this is very natural looking attacking stuff now. Just putting more pressure on the g-file, building up. Bishop f4 here. Queen g3. Rook g1, so trebling on that pawn g7, putting black on a real defensive foot. Queen f8. Now rook h4, and there's a menacing a tactical idea here which is employed, which is queen g6 check. Black dare not take that queen because hg is mate, in fact. So this is forced king h8. Now we have rook g5, bishop d7, bishop e3, bishop b5, rook g3. So it seems, what's going on now? We have rook e7, and the funny thing is, it's almost as if there's a weakness of the last move here created. as if it was like a human game, where Leela plays an innocuous looking move f3. Now, she could have played more actively here. I mean, f3 might serve, of course, some important functions, like to be able to maybe play rook g2 and defend b2 later or something. But she could have gone on the offensive with bishop g5. This looks as though almost as if h6 is dangerous, but it's not here. But she didn't do that here. But h6 is a very interesting story. There's a very interesting story about h6 coming up, and this is why I say it's almost like a little human game, because black's move bishop d7 actually it takes away the king's escape squares in some variations. Yeah, the black king might have wanted to use d7 in this particular variation now, where black, because of that kind of weakness of the last move, stopping. I know this is crazy stuff technically, right? But bishop g5 has got a lot more venom in this particular position. So let me tell you the story of bishop g5 here. With the bishop on d7, this is a whole load of difference. This is a whole pain difference. The rook actually didn't move a6. It was just offered as a sacrificial lamb. Now you might wonder why. Let's have a look. If the rook moves h6 here, yeah, that bishop is stopping an escape of the black king, because have a look at this. White's threatening the devastating hg mating. So let's go with fg. Now we have hg, g, discover check, double check. The king takes. Bishop h6 check. King f7. Rook f4 check. And look at this. This is what I mean. The king can't go to use d7 here. So this is really devastating. Bishop g5 check, because of that silly bishop on d7 here, which wasn't working before. So black would have to give up the queen, and this is just a horrible, horrendous position for black. Black is just losing this. White's got a big advantage here. So yeah, oh, there might be knight f1 check. Sorry, the point of pinning the bishop is knight f1 check. So king g2, and then that's a big advantage, because if once the bishop moves, then e6 is dropping. So just getting rid of all the tactics, white is a big advantage. Just to explain that one. But yeah, it looks as though that makes a whole world of difference, the bishop being on d7 in this whole line with h6. Yeah, if we looked at this earlier, I just want to categorically prove that to you. Here, this waiting move, which caused a weakness of the last move in a way, is king evacuation. Bishop g5 here, this whole thing doesn't work, because you can see the king is going to safely move away to d7. There's nothing. So let's go back. So basically, because of Leela's crushing waiting move, creating this mistake, bishop g5 is literally, it's like winning the exchange and probably the game now, really, in practical terms. So we have rook gg4 here, knight c1, queen g5, which forces the exchange of queens because it's hitting e7 and c1. Well, it's just the exchange up, basically. Winning that exchange was winning the game. b2 drops, and it looks as though c3 is an issue, but Leela doesn't mind that, actually, because f5, this is enough with h6. This is devastating enough, this position, to come back to hold c3 and then play h7. And here, taking on g6. Yeah, it's far too dangerous to do something like this, I believe, because of rook f4 hitting f2 and threatening rook f8 and stuff. So we have rook takes g6, white, it's just the exchange up, and Leela doesn't mind even giving back the exchange potentially to knight f3 check here, because this happens, there's a winning basically king and pawn ending at the end of this. It's totally winning king and pawn ending. And you might think, well, it's equal on pawns, so let's play this a bit out to the end of the game that happened. White basically wins d5 in exchange for f6. And black doesn't even bother taking on f6. These pawns are just going. So this is a winning ending. The game ended here due to count as a win for white. White can trivially just take on b4 here. This pawn is not running away because of king takes c4 and then king b3. So it's totally winning this position, adjudicated as a win for white here. So French defense advanced variation. So basically, I can't emphasize enough, Leela knows the exact conditions. You've got to get the exact conditions for a caveman attack to be effective. You don't want to lose key attacking pieces, which are going to blast away the little pawn structure around the opponent's king. You want to restrain the little pawn structure around the opponent's king, like Milosevic would in some of his games, before hitting it hard with g5. Opening up the g file means natural coordination exists. You can start doubling, trebling. Queen sacrifices possibilities emerge. A killer waiting move at this time control, bishop d7, meant that there was big trouble after h6 with the diagonal being more effective because the king didn't have d7. So that was actually winning the exchange. That little detail, bishop d7, ended up Leela winning the exchange. So she's pretty mighty technically anyway. If she did see that, the engine must have trusted her anyway and just gave up the rook, didn't bother testing that. The rook wasn't moved. So black the exchange down, just losing position. So a kind of an instructive attacking game. Get the conditions right for the caveman attack as this game shows and you'll be fine. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.